Welcome to the world of science fiction, where imagination turns real and every story takes you beyond the stars. Enjoy the ride. The morning sky over Nevada didn't look real. It was blood red, like someone had set the heavens on fire. Smoke curled low across the fields, and every gust of wind carried the scent of metal and ash. George wiped the sweat from his brow and squinted at the horizon. He'd seen brush fires before, plenty of them, but nothing like this. Too bright, too fast, and far too silent. The air itself felt wrong, like it was holding its breath. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel of his old truck, engine grumbling beneath him, and muttered, "That ain't natural." The road toward the canyon was cracked and lonely. As he drove, the sky seemed to pulse with light. Then out of nowhere, something silver tore through the clouds, fast, twisting, breaking apart mid-air like a burning comet. The shockwave hit seconds later, rattling his windshield and sending a flock of black birds screaming into the air. George slammed the brakes, dust exploding around the tires. For a long heartbeat, there was only the sound of his engine ticking. Then came a sound that didn't belong out here. Someone screaming. He jumped out, grabbed his rifle from the back seat, and ran toward the smoke. The heat hit him like a wall. Flames licked at the dry grass, and the air shimmered with particles that glowed faintly blue. He should have turned back. He knew that. But the scream came again, high and desperate. When he reached the ridge, he saw the crater, metal shards everywhere, twisted into shapes that didn't look like any aircraft he knew. And at the edge of the wreckage, stumbling through smoke, was a woman. Her skin shimmered faintly with violet undertones, her hair tangled with silver dust, and in her arms she held a small child. Another girl, maybe 6 or 7, trailed behind, coughing hard. The woman's voice cracked through the smoke. "Please, help us. They'll find us." George froze. The way she said "they" made his stomach twist. "Who?" he called out, his voice echoing off the canyon walls. She looked up at him, eyes glimmering like glass. "Please, don't let them take my children." The fear in her voice hit him harder than the heat ever could. Without thinking, he ran forward, grabbing the smallest girl by the arm. "Come on," he shouted. "Get in the truck, now!" The woman hesitated only for a second, scanning the sky as if expecting something to drop from it. Then she bolted after him, clutching her other daughter tight. The moment they reached the truck, a deep rumble shook the ground, like thunder, but heavier, mechanical. George threw the kids inside, pushed the woman in next, and slammed the door. "Hold on!" he barked as he floored the gas. The truck roared forward, tires spitting gravel and ash. Behind them, a faint blue explosion lit the canyon like a second sunrise. No one spoke for miles. The woman kept glancing back, whispering things under her breath that George couldn't understand. The kids huddled together, wide-eyed and shaking. Finally, he asked, "Who are you?" "My name's Paisley," she said quietly, "and those are my daughters." "Paisley what?" She hesitated. "Just Paisley." He didn't press. He could tell she was barely holding it together. Her voice trembled every time the truck hit a bump, and when she looked out the window, it wasn't curiosity. It was dread. By the time they reached the ranch, the sun had disappeared behind the smoke. The old barn stood like a ghost on the horizon, and George's sister Alice was waiting on the porch with a coffee mug in hand. She frowned when she saw the truck barreling down the path. George barely stopped before she stepped forward. "George," she said slowly, "why do you look like you've seen a ghost? And who in God's name are they?" "Long story," he said, climbing out. "They were in some kind of crash, out by the canyon." Alice's eyes narrowed as she looked at the strangers. The older child clung to Paisley's leg. The younger one buried her face in her mother's torn clothes. "Crash?" she repeated. "I didn't hear any plane." "Yeah," George muttered. "That's what worries me." He opened the back door to help Paisley out, but she stopped him. "No one can know we're here," she said firmly. "Please, not anyone." Alice crossed her arms. "You're acting like someone's chasing you." Paisley looked up at the darkening sky, and for a moment her eyes reflected something far above, something moving behind the clouds. "They already are," she whispered. A low hum drifted through the air. The ground seemed to tremble under their feet. George turned toward the horizon, scanning the red-stained clouds. At first he thought it was thunder again. Then he saw it, a dark metallic shape gliding silently across the sky. No wings, no sound of engines, just smooth, deliberate motion. His gut tightened. The radio inside his truck crackled suddenly, filling the silence with harsh static. Then through the noise a voice spoke, soft, distorted, in a language that didn't belong to Earth. Then through the noise a voice spoke, soft, distorted, in a language that didn't belong to Earth. The youngest girl started crying, clutching her mother. Paisley's lips trembled. "They've found us," she said under her breath. George lifted his rifle and stepped in front of them, eyes locked on the horizon. The dark shape hovered briefly, then faded into the storm clouds. For a few seconds, the world went completely still. Even the wind stopped moving. He didn't know who this woman was or what she dragged into his quiet world. But when he looked at those two terrified kids hiding behind her, one thing became painfully clear. Whatever had followed her here wasn't human, and it wasn't done yet. The night wind howled across the ranch, dragging smoke from the canyon miles away. The fire still glowed faintly beyond the horizon, but out here, under a bruised sky, silence had weight. George stood at the porch with his rifle resting against the rail, eyes scanning the distance. He couldn't shake the image of that wreckage, the silver debris burning clean through rock like acid, or the sound of that voice over the radio, a language that didn't belong anywhere on Earth. Inside the house, he could hear muffled whispers. Alice was trying to calm the children, offering them warm milk and an old blanket, while Paisley sat near the window, her trembling hands clasped together. When George finally stepped inside, the woman looked up sharply, her violet eyes flickering like candlelight. "You shouldn't stand near windows," she said softly. "If they see movement, they'll trace it." Her words made his skin crawl. Alice shot him a look that said, "What the hell did you bring here?" but kept her mouth shut. George sat across from the woman, studying her. She wasn't like any alien movie creature, no scales, no antennae, just human enough to unsettle him, but with something in her that didn't fit this world. "You're going to have to start explaining," he said quietly. "Who's chasing you?" Paisley hesitated, her eyes moving to her daughters asleep on the couch. "They're called the Vorn," she whispered. "They don't forgive defectors, especially mothers." George frowned. "Defectors from what?" She took a long breath. "From their war. A war your world will never survive if they reach it." The room went cold. Alice muttered, "Okay, that's crazy." But George didn't laugh. The look in Paisley's eyes was too real for madness. Outside, something flickered in the sky again. Brief, distant, like a lightning strike with no thunder. George felt it before he saw it, a pulse in the air that made the windows hum. "They're scanning," Paisley whispered. "They can sense metal, heat signatures. We need to hide." George rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Hide? You want me to bury my damn truck too?" She looked at him, desperate. "If you don't, they'll find this place. They'll burn it." That word hit him like a punch. Burn. He'd seen what they did to the canyon. Without another word, he stepped outside and pulled a tarp over his truck, then tossed dirt and straw over the metal hood. He didn't believe in aliens, but he believed in the look of someone who's seen hell. When he came back, Paisley was standing by the door, staring at a small glass orb she'd pulled from her pocket. It glowed faintly blue and hummed with a low vibration. "What the hell is that?" he asked. "A tracker," she said quietly. "One of theirs. I took it when I ran." She placed it on the table, and George watched as the light inside the orb pulsed faster, brighter, until Paisley slammed her hand down and smashed it to pieces. The house fell silent again, the shards smoking faintly. Alice whispered, "You just made my table smoke." Paisley didn't even look up. "It's better than them finding us." Hours passed like days. The kids finally slept upstairs, and Alice sat near the fire, pretending not to stare at the strange woman across the room. George kept pacing, his boots creaking on the old wood floor. "You got any idea how long we can keep this up?" he asked. Paisley shook her head. "They'll search until dawn. But if we survive the night, they might lose the trail." She leaned back against the wall, exhaustion heavy in her face. Where I'm from, there's no mercy for those who leave. My husband tried to stop them once. He died for it. Her voice broke on the last word. George looked at her for a long time, seeing not some alien fugitive, but a mother running from a life she couldn't bear. The clock on the mantel struck 2 when the ground began to tremble. Dishes rattled. Alice's coffee spilled across the table. George grabbed his rifle. Outside, a sound like 1,000 cicadas filled the air, rising into a metallic scream. A beam of white light cut across the field, sweeping past the barn and freezing over the truck tarp. George dropped to one knee behind the window. Through the thin glass, he saw it, something hovering low over the fields, black as midnight, its surface shifting like liquid metal. The beam stopped at the edge of the porch, humming, searching. Paisley pressed her hand over her mouth to keep from making a sound. The children stirred upstairs. The light lingered for a long, impossible minute before sliding away, disappearing into the smoke. When it was gone, George exhaled slowly. That thing, it wasn't a plane, Paisley nodded. It's a scout. Once it reports back, more will come. He felt anger rise in his chest. Then we move before they do. She looked up sharply. Move where? There's nowhere safe here. Then we make it safe, he said, voice low and steady. No one's burning my land again. Alice gave him a hard look. You're out of your damn mind if you think we're fighting aliens with a hunting rifle. George didn't answer. He walked to the window, staring into the dark where the beam had vanished. Mind or not, he said quietly, they came to the wrong ranch. As the night dragged on, silence crept back, but it was the kind that hides a storm. The wind outside whispered like distant voices, and in the faint glow of the dying fire, Paisley finally closed her eyes. Her children curled against her. George didn't sleep. He kept his rifle on his lap, watching the horizon through the open window. And just before dawn, when the first light touched the fields, he saw movement again. Small, quick, crawling across the dirt toward the barn. It wasn't human. The first light of dawn stretched pale and sickly across the plains, painting everything in ash and silence. George hadn't slept. He sat by the window with his rifle resting across his knees, eyes fixed on the barn. Something had moved there an hour ago, low to the ground, fast, deliberate. Now the ranch looked still, but every instinct in him screamed that it wasn't over. Inside, Alice was making coffee she didn't intend to drink, her hands shaking slightly as she poured it. Paisley sat near the cold hearth, her 2 daughters asleep beside her, faces pressed into a blanket that smelled faintly of smoke and hay. The world outside felt held in breathless suspension, like even the wind was waiting for something to happen. George stood, quietly chambered around, and nodded toward the door. Stay inside. Don't make a sound. He stepped onto the porch, boots crunching softly against the frost. The air was colder than it should have been for Nevada in late summer. He moved toward the barn, every footstep slow, deliberate. Halfway there, he saw it. The dirt beneath the doors had been disturbed, like something had crawled under instead of walking in. The horses inside were restless, snorting and stomping against their stalls. George swallowed hard, his pulse hammering. He raised the rifle and pushed the door open with the barrel. The interior was dim, streaks of light slicing through broken slats in the roof. Dust floated like silver ash. The smell was wrong, metallic and sweet, like burnt ozone. He took one step forward, then another, scanning the shadows. Something shifted in the far corner, a faint ripple of movement. His finger tightened on the trigger. Who's there? He called softly. The answer came not in words but in sound, a high, clicking whine, followed by a slow, dragging scrape across the floor. A shape unfolded itself from the dark, thin, jointed, its skin reflecting the faint light like polished glass. It wasn't large, maybe the size of a man, but its limbs bent wrong. Too many joints, too smooth. George's breath caught in his throat. The creature turned its head toward him, and for a moment the light caught its eyes. Pale, silver, emotionless. He fired. The gunshot cracked the morning open, echoing off the hills. The creature jerked back, the bullet sparking off its shoulder like metal striking metal. It screeched, a piercing electronic sound, and lunged forward. George fired again, the second shot hitting it square in the chest, sending it sprawling into the hay. He backed toward the door, heart pounding. The thing twitched, convulsed, then went still. Smoke rose from the bullet wound, the scent of burned circuitry thick in the air. He stood there for a long moment, rifle raised, waiting for it to move again. When it didn't, he lowered the gun slightly and stepped closer. The creature's body shimmered faintly, shifting between solid and transparent, as if it were struggling to hold its form. Paisley's voice came from behind him, trembling. "You shouldn't have shot it." He turned sharply. She was standing in the doorway, her daughters clinging to her legs, eyes wide with fear. "It was coming for the house," he snapped. "You wanted me to offer it breakfast?" She shook her head, stepping closer. "That wasn't a soldier. It was a scout, organic surveillance. When it dies, it transmits. They know we're here now." George's stomach dropped. "Then we better move fast." Back in the house, Alice was shoving supplies into a duffel bag, canned food, water, a first aid kit. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "Where the hell are we even going, George?" He looked out the window toward the horizon. "There's an old storm shelter near the riverbed. My dad built it back when folks thought the world was ending in '62. It's deep enough, maybe shielded." Paisley nodded. "If it's underground, it might block their scans. But we'll have to leave now, before the others arrive." They packed fast. Paisley woke her daughters gently, whispering to them in a language George didn't understand. The little one cried when she saw the creature's body near the barn, and George quietly covered it with a tarp before loading the truck. The drive out was silent, except for the rumble of the tires and the wind howling across the open fields. The girls huddled in the back seat, Paisley holding them close. Every few minutes, she'd glance out the window, scanning the sky. "They move through the upper clouds," she said softly. "If you see a shimmer, it means they're hunting." After an hour, they reached the dry riverbed, a jagged scar running through the desert. The old shelter was there, half buried in sand, the entrance covered with a rusted metal door. George jumped out, brushed off the sand, and forced it open. A wave of stale, cold air rushed out. "It'll do," he said. They climbed down one by one, the girls clutching their mother's hands. Inside, the space was small but sturdy. Reinforced concrete walls, an old table, and a flickering lantern George had left years ago. He lit it, and for a moment, the soft glow made the place almost feel safe. Paisley sat down, pulling her daughters close. "You didn't have to do this," she said quietly. "You could have left us." George leaned against the wall, his rifle still in hand. "Maybe I should have," he admitted, "but that ain't how I was raised." He looked at her for a long moment. "Tell me the truth. Are more of them coming?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, and not just for me, for what I carry." She reached into her coat and revealed a small metallic disc, no bigger than a coin, glowing faintly blue. "What is that?" he asked. She looked him in the eye. "Hope. For my people, and maybe yours." Before George could ask more, a deep rumble shook the ground above them. Dust rained from the ceiling, the lantern flickering. The children screamed, and Alice grabbed them, pulling them against the wall. George lifted his rifle and looked at Paisley. "They found us again, didn't they?" She closed her eyes. "No," she whispered. "Something worse did." The night hung over the ranch like a heavy blanket of silence. No crickets, no wind, just the faint hum of electricity in the air. George leaned on the window frame, a half-empty mug of coffee cooling in his hand. Beyond the glass, the field stretched endless and still, bathed in moonlight. But something about that light felt wrong. It shimmered, moving in soft pulses, like the ground itself was breathing. Inside, the house was quiet. Regina had put the girls to bed early. Alice had fallen asleep hugging her old stuffed toy, while Paisley lay wide-eyed staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying the strange whispers she'd heard earlier that evening. Whispers that seemed to echo inside her bones. Then she felt it again, a vibration beneath the bed, faint, rhythmic. Her heart jumped. She sat up, pressing her feet to the floorboards. The pulse was stronger now, spreading through the wood like something alive. "Mom?" she called softly. No answer. She crept to the door and opened it. The hallway light flickered once, twice, and went out. From the window at the far end of the hall, a soft purple glow bled through the curtains. George heard the creak of the floorboards and turned. Paisley? Before he could reach her, the house gave a deep, trembling groan, as if the foundation itself were alive. Pictures on the wall rattled. A mug slid off the counter and shattered. "Get back!" he shouted, rushing forward. But Paisley was already at the door. The moment she stepped onto the porch, the earth beneath her boots pulsed with violet light. Thin streams of energy shot across the ground, curling like veins, spreading toward the barn. Regina appeared in the doorway, her face pale, eyes wide with recognition. "No, not again." "What the hell is happening?" George barked. Regina didn't answer. She moved toward Paisley slowly, her voice trembling. "Sweetheart, listen to me. Whatever you do, don't touch the light." But Paisley was mesmerized. Her eyes reflected the glow, her breathing shallow. She reached down instinctively, her hand hovering just above the soil. And then it happened. A blast of light erupted, blinding white mixed with alien violet. The wind roared through the valley, slamming the barn doors open. Inside, old tools clattered to the floor, hay scattered like ash in a storm. Strange markings, glowing in sequence, crawled across the barn walls. Symbols no human language could name. Alice screamed from inside the house. "Mom! Make it stop!" George pulled Paisley back, but the moment he touched her, he felt a surge, like grabbing a live wire. He stumbled, gasping, eyes wide with disbelief. "What the? She's burning hot!" Regina caught her daughter holding her close. "It's not her fault," she whispered. "It's calling her." "Calling her?" George snapped. "You brought this here, didn't you? You're kind, you're whatever you are." Regina looked at him, tears glimmering in the purple light. "I thought I could hide it. I thought running here would keep them from finding her." "Them," he echoed. "Who's them?" Before she could answer, the light in the field dimmed, replaced by a deep rumble. The ground shifted beneath their feet. From somewhere far beyond the horizon, an echo rolled, low and endless, like a heartbeat made of thunder. Paisley stirred in her mother's arms. Her skin shimmered faintly, her veins tracing soft violet lines. She looked frightened, but also strangely calm. "I can hear them," she whispered. "They're saying my name." Regina's face drained of color. "No, you don't listen to them, do you hear me? You fight it." But Paisley's eyes glowed faintly now, and her voice changed, layered, almost musical. "It's not trying to hurt me. It wants me to come home." George felt the chill crawl down his spine. He stared at Regina. "Home? She's human." Regina's lips trembled. "Half," she said softly. "Half human. Half of me." The words hit him like a punch. The truth, finally spoken aloud, ripped through the tension like a blade. George stumbled back, disbelief turning to rage. "You lied to me. You lied about everything." "I was trying to protect her," Regina said, voice breaking. "From what's buried here. From who might come looking." The rumble deepened. The glow beneath the soil flared once more, then vanished completely, leaving only the quiet hiss of wind through the grass. For a moment it seemed over. The silence returned, thick and uneasy. George exhaled, trying to steady his heartbeat. But then, a shadow moved at the far edge of the field. Tall, luminous, watching. Its outlines shimmered, purple against the darkness, eyes burning like molten gold. It didn't walk. It hovered, weightless, motionless. George froze. "Regina," he whispered, "tell me you see that." She turned, her expression collapsing into pure dread. "They found us." The figure raised one arm and traced a line in the air. Letters of glowing light formed between them, smooth and curved, almost beautiful. Then one by one, the symbols twisted into words George could read. "She's not yours." The message hung there for a moment, burning blue against the night. And then the figure was gone, vanished into the wind, leaving behind only the faint echo of humming energy. George stood rooted to the ground. Paisley clung to Regina's arm, her eyes now completely human again. But deep inside them, the glow still flickered. He looked at her, at the trembling soil, at the endless, dark sky. Whatever was buried beneath that land wasn't done yet. It had chosen his daughter. He reached for Regina's hand, and for the first time, she didn't pull away. Somewhere deep beneath the ranch, the earth pulsed once more. Slow, heavy, alive. The next morning didn't feel like morning at all. The sun rose weak, pale, its light too thin to cut through the fog crawling over the ranch. Every surface seemed to hum faintly, as if the air itself remembered what had happened last night. George hadn't slept. He sat on the porch, shotgun leaning beside him, eyes fixed on the fields that now looked like a different world. The ground still bore the faint scars of light, glowing veins buried under dirt, waiting to breathe again. Inside, Regina moved quietly. She kept glancing at the window, her shoulders tense. Her alien skin had dimmed to a dull lilac, and there was something in her gaze George hadn't seen before. Pure fear. Paisley sat at the table, her small hands trembling around a mug of cocoa. She looked exhausted, hollow-eyed. "I don't remember all of it," she whispered. "Just voices, like they were inside my head." George swallowed hard. "They said she's not yours," he muttered, half to himself. "What the hell does that even mean?" Regina turned slowly. "It means they're coming." He stared. "Who?" She hesitated, then spoke the words she'd avoided for years. "The gatherers, the ones who cleanse what doesn't belong. When they find a half-breed, they take them, sometimes to fix them, sometimes to erase them." The room fell silent. Alice whimpered, crawling closer to her sister. George's jaw clenched. "Over my dead body." Regina's eyes softened with sorrow. "That's exactly what it might cost you." A low thunder rolled outside, but the sky was clear. George rose instantly, shotgun in hand. He stepped to the door and froze. Out on the far side of the field, the fog had thickened into walls of silver mist. Shapes moved inside it, tall, indistinct, glowing faintly. "They're here," Regina whispered. Paisley felt her chest tighten, her heartbeat sinking with the pulsing soil beneath her feet. The hum grew louder, not from the ground this time, but from inside her. The light that had touched her last night was awake again. Regina grabbed her daughter's face gently. "Listen to me, sweetheart. If they call your name, don't answer. No matter what you hear." "Why?" "Because if you answer, they'll find your frequency. They'll take you apart from the inside out." Before George could react, the front door rattled violently. Every light in the house flickered. Alice screamed. The mist outside curled like smoke as a shadow stepped through it. Humanoid but wrong in all the ways that made George's skin crawl. Its eyes glowed white, face covered in shifting patterns like liquid glass. "Step away from the child," it said in a voice that wasn't a voice at all. It vibrated in their skulls, cold and absolute. George raised the shotgun. "Not gonna happen." It tilted its head slightly, almost curious. "Primitive weapons. Still believing you can own what was never yours." Regina stepped forward, her tone calm but trembling. "She's mine. Leave us alone." The creature's expression shifted. Pity, maybe. "You broke the code, Regina of Velis 9. You bred with them. The child carries the anomaly." Paisley clutched her mother's arm. "Mom, what are they talking about?" Regina didn't answer. George fired. A deafening boom that shattered the silence. The blast tore through the creature, scattering sparks of blue light. For a heartbeat it seemed gone, and then it reformed, whole again, stepping closer. "Violence," it said flatly. "How expected." It raised its hand. The shotgun twisted in midair, metal folding like paper before exploding into dust. George stumbled back, shielding the girls. Paisley screamed, but her scream came with light, the same violet energy bursting from her chest. It hit the creature like a wave, sending it flying through the wall. The windows shattered, curtains bursting into flame. Everyone froze. Even Regina looked stunned. Paisley fell to her knees, trembling, her skin pulsing with light. "I didn't mean to." Regina held her tight. "You didn't do it. It's defending itself through you." Outside, more silhouettes emerged in the mist. 5, maybe 6. Their eyes burned through the fog like twin moons. The air buzzed with low, metallic whispers, a language older than humanity. George grabbed his keys. "We can't stay here." Regina nodded quickly. "There's a ravine north of the property, deep enough to hide us from their sensors." They ran. The ground shook beneath their boots, light flickering under the soil like a heartbeat trying to break free. Behind them, the ranch was swallowed by the mist. From the haze, one last voice called out, sharp, echoing through their skulls. "You cannot run from what she is." Regina turned to look one last time. The figures stood still, watching. The barn roof caved in under invisible force, flames licking upward in silence. Paisley clung to her father, tears streaming. "I didn't ask for this." George tightened his grip. "Doesn't matter, kiddo. You're ours, and we're not letting anyone take you." They disappeared into the forest, swallowed by the dark. The sound of the burning ranch faded behind them, replaced by the distant hum of something vast moving underground. And somewhere deep inside Paisley, beneath fear and confusion, another presence stirred. A voice, soft, ancient, familiar. "We're almost home," it whispered. The forest was silent except for their footsteps. Branches snapped under boots. The night smelled of rain and ash. Behind them, the ranch still burned, a distant glow against the horizon. George didn't look back. He couldn't. Every flicker of that fire felt like failure. His home, his land, everything he'd built, gone in one night because of something he didn't even understand. Regina walked ahead, guiding them through the woods. The faint blue veins on her hands glowed in rhythm with the ground. She seemed to know exactly where to step, as if the earth itself was showing her the way. Paisley stumbled once, clutching her head. "It's too loud," she whispered. George caught her. "What's loud?" "The voices," she said. "They're whispering. They know I'm awake." Regina froze. The color drained from her face. "Already?" "What's going on?" George demanded. Regina turned, her voice barely steady. "The connection is complete. Whatever touched her last night, it's in her blood now. She's broadcasting." "Broadcasting?" "To them," Regina said quietly. "Every time her heart beats, it sends a pulse, a signal across space. The gatherers aren't following our trail. They're following her pulse." George's grip tightened on the shotgun handle he'd scavenged from the barn ruins. "Then tell me how to stop it." Regina looked away. "You can't stop blood." The air grew colder as they reached the ravine, a narrow valley covered in moss and fog. Lightning flickered somewhere far off, but there was no sound of thunder. The world felt muted, like they were walking inside a dream. They found an old storm shelter buried beneath roots and half-collapsed stone. George kicked the door open. Inside was darkness, stale air and dust, but enough space to hide. They went in. Hours passed. The silence pressed against them. Alice slept curled against Regina, while George sat at the entrance, watching the sky through a crack in the roof. Then, a faint humming began. Paisley twitched in her sleep, her face scrunching like she was listening to something far away. "Mom," she murmured, half asleep. "They're not trying to hurt me. They're calling me home." Regina's eyes snapped open. "No," she whispered. She grabbed Paisley's shoulders, shaking her gently. "Don't listen, sweetheart. They'll lie to you. They'll make it sound beautiful, but it's death." Paisley's eyes fluttered open, glowing faintly violet. "It doesn't sound like death. It sounds like me." Before Regina could answer, the air shifted. A deep vibration rolled through the shelter. Dust fell from the ceiling. George looked up. "What the hell is that?" Regina's voice trembled. "They found the signal." Outside, the fog glowed with distant light. Slow, deliberate movements, like shadows walking with purpose. George loaded his weapon. "We're not running this time." Regina stepped closer. "If you fight, they'll kill you." "They don't see us as enemies. They see us as errors." "Then they'll have to fix a lot of errors tonight," George growled. The door shuddered. A beam of white light sliced through the crack. The smell of ozone filled the air. Paisley screamed, but not from fear. Her entire body began to glow, brighter this time. The ground vibrated, cracks splitting across the concrete floor. "George!" Regina shouted. "Get away from her!" He didn't. He wrapped his arms around his daughter, even as the light seared his skin. "She's my kid. I don't care what's inside her." Then silence. The light vanished. The humming stopped. The world seemed to hold its breath. When George opened his eyes, they weren't in the shelter anymore. They stood in a vast empty field. Silver grass stretching endlessly in all directions. The sky above them shimmered with violet clouds and stars that moved like living things. "What? Where are we?" he whispered. Regina looked around, her voice breaking. "Inside her." Paisley stood a few feet away, her hair lifting in a soft current that wasn't there. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "This is where they come from." George stepped forward, but something stopped him. A translucent wall of energy. His hand passed through light that burned cold. "Paisley, come back." She looked at him with eyes that weren't entirely hers anymore. "They say I belong with them." "No!" Regina shouted. "You belong here, with us." Paisley hesitated. The field flickered. For a moment, George saw the real world again. The shelter, the dirt floor, the storm outside. And then it faded back to the alien landscape. A deep voice echoed across the field. "The blood remembers. The child must return." Figures appeared on the horizon, the same glowing beings that had destroyed the ranch. Only now their faces weren't cold. They looked sorrowful, as if mourning something already lost. Regina dropped to her knees. "Please, let her live. She's just a child." One of the figures stepped closer. "She is not dying, Regina. She is awakening." Paisley's body pulsed with light again. The ground trembled underfoot. "Mom, I can feel them. All of them. They're not monsters. They're family." George's voice broke. "You're our family, kid. You hear me? You're ours." Paisley looked at him, torn. One tear rolled down her glowing cheek. "I don't want to leave you." "Then don't," he whispered. "Fight it. Stay." The figures raised their hands. The field began to collapse, light folding in on itself. Regina reached out, screaming, "Paisley!" Paisley turned, and in that moment, her light exploded outward, tearing through both worlds at once. When George blinked again, they were back in the shelter. The air was still. The fog outside was gone. Paisley lay unconscious, breathing shallowly. Human again, her skin pale, no glow. George held her close, trembling. "She's okay. She's okay." Regina's face was wet with tears. "For now," she said, "but she opened something tonight. Something that won't close." Outside, the sky shimmered faintly violet, like a warning. The desert was quiet again. Wind brushed through the wheat fields behind George's ranch, whispering like the ghosts of all the moments that had tried to destroy him. The porch light hummed low, throwing a faint amber glow across the wooden steps where Paisley sat, holding her mother's old pendant, the one that used to pulse when the stars aligned. Alice stood by the fence, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the night sky that had once stolen everything from them. The hum of the pendant grew stronger. George stepped outside, tired but alive. The kind of exhaustion that comes after surviving not just a storm, but a lifetime of them. He looked at the two girls, then up at the horizon where a faint violet shimmer appeared, spreading like dawn, but colder, familiar. Regina's ship, the alien woman who had once hidden her tears behind human skin, who'd risked everything to protect her daughters on a world that wasn't hers. Paisley whispered, voice trembling, "Is she coming back?" George didn't answer right away. He just watched the violet glow drift lower until it hovered silently over the ranch. The pendant in Paisley's hand pulsed brighter, matching the rhythm of a heartbeat. Her mother's heartbeat. Then through the shimmer, a figure stepped down. It was Regina, her eyes glowing faint lilac, face streaked with both tears and starlight. She wasn't the alien fugitive anymore. She was just a mother who came home. Alice ran first, barefoot through the dirt, laughing and crying all at once. Paisley followed, the pendant swinging wildly. George stayed where he was, chest tight, eyes wet. Regina crouched as the girls collided into her arms. The ship's engines purred softly, waiting, like it knew this wasn't goodbye yet. She looked up at George, and for the first time since he'd met her, she smiled without fear. "You kept your word," she said. George tipped his hat, voice low. "You earned it." The pendant dimmed, its purpose complete. The night sky shimmered once more, before going still, leaving only the sound of laughter and the quiet hum of a ranch that had seen too many miracles to stay ordinary. As dawn broke over the horizon, George looked at the girls, at Regina, and at the sky that had finally stopped taking things from him. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. He turned toward the barn, muttering softly, "Welcome home." And somewhere deep in the wheat fields, a faint purple light flickered, not as a warning this time, but as a promise that their story wasn't ending, only beginning again.